Okay, so let's unpack this. I want you to picture a situation that I think every single person listening has experienced at least once.
Oh, I'm sure we all have.
Yeah. You've just spent maybe 3 hours studying. You have the textbook open. You're highlighting half the page in neon yellow.
Right, the classic neon yellow.
Exactly. And maybe you've even nodded along to a lecture or a YouTube tutorial. You close the book and you feel incredibly productive.
You think you nailed it.
You really do. You think I nailed that. And then a friend walks in and asks, so what was that chapter actually about?
And that is the moment of truth right there.
It is. And
Right.
suddenly you just blank. You stammer. You kind of grasp for a word.
Yeah.
You might remember a specific term like mitochondria or supply chain elasticity, but the actual concept, it just slips through your fingers like smoke.
It does.
Yeah.
It's the classic illusion of competence. It's
Yeah.
incredibly frustrating. And honestly, it's a bit heartbreaking because...
He's put in the time.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
sat there.
It feels like a betrayal, honestly. You did the work, you sat in the chair. But today, we're doing a deep dive into some source material that argues you didn't actually learn anything during those 3 hours.
Right, you just rented the information.
Love that phrase. Rented it.
Yeah, you rented it for your short-term memory, but you didn't buy it for long-term mastery.
So today, we're diving into a methodology based on the Accelerated Mind video. It's all about the techniques of Richard Feynman. And the premise here is bold. It might even sting a little.
It definitely challenges how we operate.
Yeah, because it says the difference between you and a genius physicist or a polyglot who speaks 8 languages, it's not biological wiring.
No, not at all.
It's not that they have a better brain, it's that they use a completely different process to encode information.
Right. We're pulling heavily from Richard Feynman's philosophy here. And for those who don't know, Feynman was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist.
A brilliant guy.
Very. But within the scientific community, he was actually famous for something else entirely. They called him the Great Explainer.
The great explainer.
Yeah, he could take the most complex, abstract concepts of quantum mechanics, things that completely baffle PhD candidates, and he could explain them so clearly that a freshman student, or even a child, could grasp the intuition.
And the source material makes a crucial point here. This wasn't just a quirky personality trait of his.
No, it was his actual learning mechanism.
Right. That's the key flip for me. He didn't explain things simply because he understood them. He understood them because he forced himself to explain them simply.
Exactly. He viewed the inability to explain something simply not as a failure of the audience, but as a failure of his own understanding.
Wow.
And that brings us to the core problem we really need to address before we get into the solution. Most people, we treat our brains like a storage box.
Oh, I am definitely guilty of this. You try to just stack boxes of facts and dates and formulas inside your head.
Hoping the door doesn't burst open before the exam.
Literally.
But the brain isn't a hard drive. It's a living machine. It's a network. It doesn't save files, it builds connections.
So if we want to stop renting knowledge and actually own it, master it so deeply we can't forget it, we need a new protocol.
A completely new protocol. And we have a specific step-by-step method to walk through today.
Step 1 involves a blank sheet of paper and a hypothetical 7-year-old.
Yes. Step 1 is the power of radical simplification.
Radical simplification.
It's deceptively simple, really. You pick the concept you want to master. Maybe it's a coding principle, a period of history, a sales strategy. It really doesn't matter.
You just write it at the top of the page.
Right at the top. And then you have to write out an explanation of that concept. But here is the constraint. You are writing it as if you are speaking to a 7-year-old child.
Okay, and I can hear people rolling their eyes right now.
Oh, sure.
They're thinking, I'm a professional, I'm an adult, I'm trying to learn advanced macroeconomics. Why on earth would I dumb it down?
But dumbing it down is the wrong way to look at it. You aren't diluting the truth. You are stripping away the noise.
The jargon.
Exactly. The constraint of the 7-year-old isn't about immaturity. It's about vocabulary. A 7-year-old doesn't know the jargon. They don't know the acronyms or the corporate buzzwords.
Which forces you to strip all of that away. You can't hide behind the fancy words anymore.
Precisely. Because jargon is often a hiding place. It's camouflage for ignorance.
Oh, that's good.
If I say to you, the synergy of the cross-functional paradigm is optimizing deliverables, I sound very smart. I sound very corporate.
You sound like my boss.
Right. But I haven't actually said anything meaningful.
You've just made noise.
Exactly. But if I have to explain that to a 7-year-old, I can't use synergy or paradigm. I have to say, we are working together to make sure the final product is better.
And suddenly the fog lifts.
Yes. The source material uses a fantastic example here regarding mathematics. fractions.
Oh man, I remember this trauma vividly. Sitting in school, staring at the chalkboard, numerator and denominator.
Those are just labels.
Yeah.
And you can memorize labels without understanding reality at all.
Right.
You can memorize that the top number is the numerator and the bottom is the denominator. And you can pass a multiple choice test with that info. But if you have to explain fractions to a 7-year-old, you cannot use those words.
You have to use a pizza.
You use a pizza. You say, if I cut this pizza into 2 equal slices and I give you 1, you have 1 piece out of 2 total pieces.
Boom. You've just defined a fraction, part over whole.
You've bypassed the abstract definition and hit the absolute essence of the concept. When you strip away the fancy language, you find out what you actually know versus what you've just memorized the name for.
It's a stress test. The 7-year-old is basically a BS detector for your own brain.
That is the perfect way to frame it. If you can't explain it simply, you don't actually understand it. You're just relying on semantic crutches.
Words you've heard but haven't digested.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've written the simple explanation. We managed to avoid using words like idiosyncratic or mitochondria without explaining them first. We're feeling good.
Very good.
But the source says writing it down isn't enough. We have to move to step 2, which honestly creates a bit of a social hazard if you do it in a coffee shop.
It does. Step 2 is teaching to an empty chair.
Literally speaking out loud
Nah.
to no one.
Yes. Out loud. And this is a non-negotiable part of the protocol. You have to speak the explanation. You can talk to a mirror, a friend, your phone camera, or an empty chair. But it must be vocalized.
Why, though? Why isn't thinking it through in my head sufficient? Because I can hear my internal monologue pretty clearly. It feels like I'm saying it.
You think you can. But this is a really fascinating bit of neuroscience. Internal thought is fast, it's abstract, and it's often cloud-like.
Cloud lights.
Yeah. You can hold vague, even contradictory ideas in your head simultaneously, and your brain just skips right over the gaps. It's like a dream where you're in one room and then suddenly you're in another, and you don't even question how you got there.
Ah, I see. But reading is silent, and speech is noisy. Speech is linear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You cannot speak 2 words at once. You have to place one idea in front of the other in a logical sequence. You have to literally build a bridge from sentence A to sentence B.
So speaking forces you to serialize your thoughts.
It forces organization. And that is exactly where the stumble happens.
A stumble.
Yes. You're explaining your concept to the empty chair.
Yeah.
You're on a roll, and then suddenly you stop. You hesitate. You say, well, it's kind of like...
That moment where you realize you don't actually know how to connect point A to point B, it's that awful feeling of hitting a wall.
But that stumble is the most valuable data point in the entire learning process.
Really?
Yes. When you read silently, your brain glosses over that gap. It says, yeah, I get the gist. But when you speak out loud, the gap is exposed. You can't hide from it.
It reminds me of when you're singing along to a song in the car. You think you know all the lyrics, you're super confident. Then the radio volume cuts out, and you realize you only know the chorus and a few mumbled vowels in the verses.
That is a perfect analogy. You recognize the song, but you couldn't recall it. We confuse recognition with mastery all the time.
Wow. Yeah.
Teaching to the empty chair converts passive recognition into active recall. It's generative. You are building the explanation, not just consuming it.
So instead of feeling stupid when we stumble, which is the natural human reaction, we need to reframe that. The stumble is a gift. It's a flashing red light on the dashboard saying, here is the hole in your knowledge.
Correct. Don't get discouraged, get curious. Just like how children learn stories, they stumble, they invent words, but that process drives accelerated learning. You've just found the exact coordinate of your ignorance.
Which leads us directly to step 3. You've stumbled. Now what?
Now is the review cycle.
Or as the source beautifully puts it, polishing the stone.
Polishing a rough stone until it becomes a diamond. This is where you go back to the source material. But you aren't rereading the whole chapter. You are laser focused on the exact gap you just discovered.
You look up the specific part you couldn't explain.
And you translate it. The source uses the concept of gravity here, which I love because everyone thinks they know what gravity is until they actually have to define it without using the word gravity.
Oh, absolutely. If you open a physics textbook, you'll get a definition like gravity is the force that attracts bodies proportional to mass, inversely proportional to the square of the distance.
And your eyes just glaze over.
Totally. I heard inverse square and I completely checked out. I can memorize that sentence for a test, but I don't feel it. I don't see it.
Exactly. It's fragile. If you forget one word, like inversely, the whole memorized sentence falls apart. So in the review cycle, you take that technical fancy version and you polish it into a visualization.
Right.
You might say, gravity is like an invisible magnet that pulls everything downward. The bigger the object, the stronger the pull.
Invisible magnet. That sticks. I can see a magnet in my head. I cannot see an inverse square law.
You've moved from an abstract, fragile mathematical concept to a solid, tangible mental image. That's the polishing. You keep refining that explanation until the stumble is gone.
Until you can explain it to that empty chair without a single
Precisely.
This seems like it connects directly to how human memory actually works. We remember pictures and stories way better than lists of rules.
We do. Our brains evolved for spatial navigation and social storytelling, not for memorizing textbooks or formulas. By converting data into images like the pizza or the invisible magnet, you are hacking your brain's natural strengths.
Which brings us to step 4. Because we need to make sure we don't just memorize one good explanation and then get completely bored.
Right.
This is creative repetition.
Or playing with knowledge. This step directly addresses the boredom factor. If you just repeat gravity is a magnet 500 times like a parrot, your brain will literally go into sleep mode.
Because it's too predictable.
Yes, it stops paying attention to the signal.
So we need to vary the signal.
Right.
The source compares this to reinforcing a bridge.
Hmm.
You don't want just one giant pillar holding up your knowledge. You want a web of support beams from a bunch of different angles.
Exactly. You want to explain the same idea from 3 or 4 different angles. The source uses electricity as the example here.
Okay, so angle 1 might be the standard textbook explanation. Electrons flowing through wires to light a bulb. Fine, but a bit dry.
So you switch to angle 2. Use an analogy. Electricity is like water flowing in pipes.
Right.
Voltage is the water pressure, how hard the water is being pushed. Current is the amount of water actually flowing. Resistance is a narrow pipe that makes it hard for water to get through.
Now I have a hydraulic model in my head. That is a completely different mental image.
Then you go to angle 3, sketch it on paper, draw the pipes. Angle 4, tell a story about it.
Tell a story, like for history.
Especially for history. Say you're learning the French Revolution. Don't just recite the dates. Tell it as a story of hungry people overthrowing a king.
Make it a drama.
Make it a stage play. Then write it as a newspaper headline.
King Louis loses head, peasants rejoice.
Exactly. It sounds silly, but you are hanging the information on multiple hooks in your brain. If you forget the date, you remember the story.
If you forget the story, you remember the headline.
You're building redundancy. The brain loves variety.
And it actually sounds fun. Like it stops being this obligation of studying and starts being a creative exercise.
That is the secret sauce. The brain treats this kind of play as pleasure. It releases dopamine when it engages in novelty.
And dopamine is like a molecular save button for memory.
It is. If you are bored, you aren't retaining. If you are playing, you're learning.
So don't be a parrot, be a playwright, be an artist. I love that.
Yeah.
But now we have to deal with the ego.
Yes.
Because even if we simplify and we teach the chair and we use all these analogies, we are going to get stuff wrong.
We absolutely are. And that is why step 5 is about embracing error as a map.
This is the hardest one for perfectionists. We are trained from day one that mistakes are bad. Errors mean you get a C on the exam. Errors mean you aren't smart.
We have to completely invert that mindset. In this method, an error is not a failure, it's a compass. It is the map to real learning.
If you never make a mistake, it means you're only practicing what you already know.
Right. You aren't learning, you're just reciting.
The source brought up a probability example here that I think trips a lot of people up. The coin toss.
Oh, a classic error. You might be explaining probability to your empty chair, and you say, well, if I flip a coin and get heads 5 times in a row, the next one has to be tails to balance it out.
The gambler's fallacy. Because it feels intuitively right. The universe should balance things out, right?
It feels right, but it is dead wrong. The coin has no memory.
The odds are always 50-50.
Always. Now, here is the magic moment. When you check your source material to verify your explanation and you realize, oh my God, I was wrong.
That shock.
That shock, that feeling of, oh, creates a hyper-strong memory trace. Surprise is a remarkably powerful learning agent.
It wakes you up. It's an emotional marker.
Yes. If you just read about independent events in a book, you might forget it in 10 minutes. But if you confidently explain it wrong to the chair and then catch yourself, you will never make that mistake again.
The error creates a scar tissue of knowledge that's stronger than the original skin.
That's a great way to put it. The source also uses a photosynthesis example.
Right. You're trying to explain how plants make food. You say water, carbon dioxide, and you're done. You feel good.
Then you check the book and realize you forgot the most important part.
Sunlight.
You forgot the power source.
That feeling of, how could I forget sunlight, actually ensures you will never forget it again.
Exactly. Every mistake is a rehearsal. So the takeaway is, stop trying to be perfect during the practice phase. Hunt for your errors. Be a scientist of your own ignorance.
Ask yourself, what exactly caused me to get this wrong? Curiosity over judgment.
If you judge yourself, your brain shuts down. If you get curious, you strengthen those weak connections.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of the fun stuff. Drawing pictures, talking to chairs, imagining pizzas. But the source pivots hard at the end. Step 6 is the reality check.
The non-negotiable ingredient.
Hard work.
It had to come up eventually.
It did. I feel like we always want the one weird trick that makes learning effortless. But the source and the experts are really clear here. There is no magic trick without effort.
The brain is a muscle. It needs resistance to grow. If the learning feels too easy, you probably aren't learning much at all.
The method we've discussed, simplifying, teaching, reviewing, it's cognitively demanding. It's way harder than just highlighting text in a book.
Oh, absolutely. Highlighting is easy. You just move your hand. It's empty effort. Explaining quantum mechanics to a hypothetical 7-year-old? That is sweaty work.
Sweaty work.
But that is why it works. Learning is a biological change. You are physically rearranging connections in your brain. That consumes energy.
If you go to the gym and lift a styrofoam weight, you don't build muscle, you need resistance.
Precisely. The effort stops being empty and becomes targeted.
So that feeling of mental fatigue, when your brain actually hurts a little bit after trying to simplify a complex topic, that is the feeling of growth, that's the burn.
Most people interpret that discomfort as, I'm not good at this. They should interpret it as, oh, it's working.
But there is a difference between busy work and this kind of hard work, right? Like underlining a book for 4 hours is technically hard, but it's not effective.
Right. Because underlining is low cognitive load. It's passive. You can do it while zoning out.
I definitely have.
We all have.
Yeah.
But simplification, teaching, creating analogies that is high cognitive load, it requires intense focus. You might only be able to do it for 30 minutes at a time.
But those 30 minutes are worth 5 hours of passive reading.
Density over duration. And the source ends this section with a very clear commitment, a call to action.
I choose to learn without limits.
Yes, it's a command to the brain to start reprogramming itself, to accept the resistance.
So let's bring this all home. We've got a roadmap here. Let's recap the cycle so everyone can see the whole picture.
It's a continuous loop.
Yeah.
Step 1, simplify. Write it for a 7-year-old to strip away the jargon and find the essence.
Step 2, teach. Speak it out loud to the empty chair to force linearity and expose gaps.
Step 3, review. Use the stumble to target exactly what you need to polish, going back to the source.
Step 4, play. Use creative repetition analogies, stories, drawings to build a web of connections.
Step 5, embrace error. Let mistakes be your map, your compass, not your judge.
And step 6, work hard. Accept the cognitive resistance as a sign of growth.
And the promise here is that a mind forced to expand in this way never returns to its original size.
You aren't just storing facts, you're upgrading your operating system.
And this applies to everything. We talked about physics and history, but apply this to your life. Can you explain your company's business model to a 7-year-old?
Can you explain the rules of cricket?
Can you explain why you're angry at your partner?
Ooh, that last one is dangerous.
Dangerous, but effective. If you can't explain the core of the problem simply, you probably don't understand the problem yet. Simplification yields clarity in literally every aspect of life.
That is a very powerful thought. So here is our challenge to you, the listener. Don't just nod along to this deep dive and think, oh, that sounds nice.
That's the illusion of knowledge all over again.
Exactly. Break the cycle. Pick one topic today, not tomorrow, today. Just one concept you've been avoiding because it's too hard or too intimidating.
Maybe it's how the blockchain works. Maybe it's a philosophy concept. Maybe it's how a car engine works.
Take that blank sheet of paper, write the 7-year-old explanation at the top, and just see how far you get before you stumble.
And please, talk to the empty chair, even if you feel silly. Honestly, especially if you feel silly.
The silliness is the sound of your brain reorganizing.
I love that.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought derived from the source's philosophy. We often look at people like Feynman or Einstein, and we think they were just operating on a different plane of existence.
That they were just born different.
Right. But if every great mind in history was simply someone who worked relentlessly hard to make the complex simple, What impossible skill are you currently avoiding just because you haven't tried explaining it to a 7-year-old yet?
It completely changes the definition of potential, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It puts the ball squarely in your court.
It really does. Thanks for deep diving with us today. Go find that empty chair, and we'll see you next time.